As it's been touched on before on this channel, the Browns draft this year is kinda just weird. They don't have a top 5 pick. That chance to get one of the big names and big faces of college football that you've seen star for 2, 3 years. Hell, they don't even have a first round pick. So for me, this changes how I view the draft and get excited and look into players. It's been a weird experience for me, to say the least. So what I did was some deep digging around the crevices of college football, from FBS to FCS, from Power 5 to Group of 5. I looked through all of those teams. I scoured the internet. I read every draft guide, and I found 4 hidden gems that John Dorsey will find in this draft. This year will be a true test to the ideal that John Dorsey is an elite talent evaluator, especially at finding talent in the mid to late rounds, because congratulations, John Dorsey, that's all the picks that we got this year. Now, there's no complaining about that because one of those picks got us Odell Beckham. But still, if you're the Browns, you're going to need to be able to add solid role players with this year's draft in order to meet expectations, which are high this year. So what I wanted to do was look at this through John Dorsey's eyes and try to look for players that not everybody is talking about. I wanted to dig up guys that you may have not heard of or may have not really thought about the Browns picking up, but I'm going to make a case for it. This list will also go in order of lowest to highest ranking according to the website, the Draft Networks. So, with all that being said, let's get into our first prospect, which is going to be number 230, Dakota Allen. It seems like every year there is a inside linebacker prospect who has become a favorite for their strong and consistent play for normally a major program that goes from being a 3rd or 4th round pick to, by the end of the draft evaluation process, either gets drafted in the 7th or doesn't get drafted at all. We saw this with guys like Scooby Wright and Ben Boulware. And this year, I definitely see that narrative happening with Dakota Allen. Dakota Allen's start this year is one of Pro Football Focus's top inside linebacker prospects. But if you look at any draft guide lately, it seems like Dakota Allen is not going to get drafted or get drafted in the 6th or 7th round, which is crazy. I mean, this guy ranks 230th on this prospect ranking. This year, I think Dakota Allen is kind of being misplaced in that category. And not to say that Dakota Allen is dropping for no reason. There is plenty of reason for him to drop. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't do well in run-stopping situations. But what I think is really dropping him is, since he's not a top-end prospect with some kind of blazing measurable that makes him jump off the charts, teams that look into him are going to see that he got dismissed from Texas Tech and not even want to take a chance in the early to mid rounds on a guy who is a solid linebacker. But I think a lot of teams are going to miss out on a guy who won't be a starting level linebacker on a really good defense, but he will be a rotational linebacker on a good defense. But more importantly, I think he is a perfect fit for a special teams linebacker who is going to be a team captain almost. For those of you who aren't familiar with Dakota Allen, he is a player who was featured on Last Chance U Season 2. If you haven't seen Last Chance U, it's a documentary on Netflix about former Division I college football players who get dismissed from big programs, who have to go to small, tiny junior colleges in these small, tiny towns and have to rebuild their resume in order to get a second chance with a big time college. If you aren't familiar with the JUCO process in college football, this happened with Cam Newton when he got dismissed from Florida, went to a JUCO for 1 year, and then got picked up by Auburn. It happens all the time in college football. It's an interesting documentary. If you're a fan, especially if you're a college football fan, I highly recommend it. Now, Dakota Allen is a former Texas Tech linebacker who got dismissed from Texas Tech because of his involvement and arrest in a robbery. He got caught up in this situation, and then he got dismissed from Texas Tech. Now, after he got dismissed to Texas Tech, Dakota Allen decided to go to East Mississippi Community College and play football there for 1 year, during which he was on Netflix's Last Chance U. And on that show, he impressed a lot of people. If you've seen that show, I almost can guarantee you're rooting for Dakota Allen because that's how well he came off. He came through as somebody who understood his mistake, accepted it, accepted the consequences, accepted where he was, and decided that he wanted to live his life better, and not only live his life better, but become a leader and help other people make positive decisions so they don't end up in the same situation he did. And in a rare case for a guy who gets dismissed from a big program, he actually got accepted back into Texas Tech after his 1 year at EMCC, and then went on to become a captain both the years he returned as a junior and senior. It is a truly remarkable story about a guy who matured remarkably fast. He is a perfect guy to have in any locker room, a perfect personality to aid the culture in any locker room, or help players who may need help finding their way because he has experience in finding his way. John Dorsey seems to want to take a lot of guys that have made mistakes and are working on reinventing themselves and becoming better people. I think Dakota Allen is a guy in that locker room that could really help and, impart wisdom to a lot of people or become a good friend to a lot of those people. Now, that's just the human aspect. But this isn't about the human aspect. This is about the football aspect, too, on the field. And this is where I see Dakota Allen as not only somebody who can help you in the locker room, but somebody who's going to be a real asset on the field. The difference between a Dakota Allen and a Ben Bower or a Scooby Wright is that Dakota Allen has plenty of athleticism to play linebacker in the NFL. The problem with him right now is that since he's only 6'1", he's not the biggest guy. He falls into that weird range where he's way too slow to be a safety or a corner, but he's not necessarily big enough or strong enough to be a every down linebacker, which puts him in a weird spot, but puts him in a perfect spot to be a special teams captain. Now, normally you don't go drafting special teamers, but there are select special teamers who can change the game and help the team gain momentum. And I think Dakota Allen is one of those guys. And also, Dakota Allen could fill a little bit of the hybrid role that Jabril Peppers left when the Browns traded him to New York by being athletic enough to drop into coverage, and that is actually what he is better at as a linebacker. So he's not just a special teams player, because one of the things I like about Dakota Allen is that he's a sure tackler. If he has you, whether you're in space, whether you're in the crowd, he's going to be able to secure you and make the tackle, which is really, really important on special teams. I mean, how many whiff tackles did Browns fans have to see on punt returns this year? And this is a guy who has led his team, whatever team he's been on, whether it's community college or Texas Tech, the first time or the second time. He's led every defense he started a season for in tackles. He is a short tackler. He has a nose for the ball, and he's athletic enough to be able to move quickly in space. And then there is the other aspect of if you're asking a guy to pretty much specialize on special teams, it takes a special type of person to be able to accept that and embrace that. I think he is the type of person who can accept and embrace that because he has been humbled so greatly before in his life. This is a guy I feel like would put 110% into that role. And I know a lot of my advocacy for Dakota Allen is me advocating for his personality, but I think that is something that is key and really important when it comes to somebody who can be a special teams captain, because essentially a special teams captain isn't a guy who has some kind of amazing skill set or, is some kind of great player, because they wouldn't necessarily be on special teams if they were so amazingly athletic or had this amazing versatility. It is 100% reliant on mentality and mindset. That's what puts people apart on special teams. And I think Dakota Allen is definitely one of those guys who can get his mind in the right place in order to make a real difference there. That's why I think John Dorsey will either spend a 6th or 7th round pick on him, or if he's available, sign him as a priority free agent after the draft. Number 86, Kaylin Saunders. At 6 foot tall, 324 pounds, Kaylin Saunders is a small school prospect with big time athleticism. Oh, if you don't believe me, check this out. Now that I have your attention, Kaylin Saunders is a defensive tackle prospect from Western Illinois University. And yes, that is a team that plays in the FCS. But something to note about the conference that he came from is one of the very best conferences in the FCS, having teams like North Dakota State, Youngstown State, and South Dakota State. Now, if you're asking me, Quincy, why do you know so much about the FCS? Why are you talking about the FCS? Because, see, that's me in that red shirt right there at a home game at YSU, like I was at every home game at YSU during my 4 years there. And during that time, I got to get a front row seat to see how good Kaylin Saunders really is. He has the size and quickness to be effective on the pro level as a run stopper. He is a guy who's going to develop into a solid to Pro Bowl level starter if he's able to develop behind strong talents like Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson. Now, some may argue he's a better fit because of his weight as a 3-4 nose tackle, while I'll argue that since he doesn't have height or length really to help him, he wouldn't be a great person to suck up a double team. I think he's a better fit in a 4-3 with 2 strong pass rushers on each side, because then he'll have a relatively the same size as a guard. He'll be able to have a quickness and athleticism advantage against the guard, allowing him to disrupt run plays and be able to be a force up the middle. And it'll allow him to perform much like he did at Western Illinois, where he had 35 tackles for loss and 16 sacks from the defensive tackle positions throughout his career. He's a guy who immediately can push Trevon Coley for his backup spot and become a reliable role player in his first year, adding immediate depth to the Browns' defensive line. And he acts as an insurance policy for Sheldon Richardson. Say 2-3 years down the line, his contract becomes undesirable. I think he's a second-round talent that's going to be taken in the 3rd or 4th round, and I think John Dorsey has his eye on Kaylin Saunders. Number 60, Amani Hooker, strong safety out of Iowa. Amani Hooker is a interesting prospect because to me, he reminds me of Jabril Peppers minus the hype. I mean, they have the same height, kind of weight. They have the same athleticism profile and a lot of the measurements when you look at them. They have a lot of the same strengths, which means they're better when they're playing closer to the line of scrimmage. They have really good instincts. They're really physical and willing tacklers, and they have some of the same weaknesses because both players, when exposed with too much space, are asked to be a cover 1 safety. Don't perform well in those roles, much like we saw Jabril Peppers struggle with in his first years of Brown. They both are ideal complements to Demarius Randall, who can occupy more space, and be more of the ball hawk. Now, Amani Hooker does have good ball spills, but he doesn't pair that with great athleticism, so to speak. So he's not really a ball hawk in that sense. He's more of like a guy who's going to catch tip ball interceptions or just be around the play. Kind of like what Tashaun Gipson did when he was in Cleveland, if you remember him. And I think while Jabril was a better athlete, more quick, more versatile, could return punts, I think Amani Hooker is going to be a more polished, strong safety prospect. He knows more about different route concepts, and he has a better football IQ for the position because he's been playing it longer, which gives him an advantage. Now, I don't think he is going to be better than Jabril, but I think he can immediately step in and be a great complement to Demarius Randall and help shore up the back end of that Browns defense. So if John Dorsey is looking to solve his strong safety problem in the 3rd or 4th round, I think Amani Hooker has a great chance of being that for the Browns. Number 48, Justin Layne. Justin Layne is a defensive back out of Michigan State, and he's also a Cleveland native who would be paired great with the Browns' other cornerback, Cleveland native Denzel Ward. Now, Justin Layne's not the best athlete. He doesn't run the fastest 40, although he ran a 4.55. But what Justin Layne has that Denzel Ward doesn't is that Justin Layne is 6'2", which makes him a perfect complement to Denzel Ward because it allows the Browns to put Justin Layne on the bigger wide receivers or more flexible tight ends and keeps Denzel Ward away from those players to where he might not have his best success at. He is a guy who fits perfectly alongside Denzel Ward as a boundary corner. And he would allow guys like TJ Carey or Terrence Mitchell to not just drop to the slot, but also drop to safety whenever needed and have Demarius Randall. It'll just give you a lot of versatile options when it comes to how Steve Wilks wants to align his cornerbacks. And that's going to become really important this season because you're going to have a lot of defensive backs on the field this year because I feel like there's going to be a lot of air raid attacks out there or air raid style attacks. The one caveat to Justin Layne, him being the highest ranked player on this list, is that he is a guy who doesn't have the best chance of being available at the Browns' first pick in the 2nd round. I can see him being snatched up in the late 1st round or early 2nd. And that means the Browns might have to trade up to secure him. And I don't know what's a fair amount to secure a player like Justin Layne because he's just not a number 1 corner. He's not somebody that if Denzel Ward goes out, you're going to want to fill his role because he can get exposed in that role with his lack of long speed and his inability to cover in space. He's a good press man corner who has size, who would be great on the boundary or against bigger wide receivers who aren't necessarily the fastest. For example, if the Browns were to play Tampa Bay, you could have him on Mike Evans because they have the same speed and allow Denzel Ward to cover somebody more like a Deshaun Jackson where he would be more effective. But again, it gets tricky when you're talking about trading up for him because he's not a guy you can have out there on the island alone. He is somebody who, if asked to do too much, will get heavily exposed. Kind of like Antonio Cromartie at the beginning of the years, who I think this guy reminds me of. So anything more than packaging a 4th or 5th this year, or maybe an extra 3rd next year to go up and get him, I would see as excessive. So I don't know what the Browns are going to do if they need to move up to get him. But I do think if he's there in the 2nd round, he would be an excellent match to Denzel Ward. So there it is, my 4 hidden gems in this year's NFL draft that I think John Dorsey is going to find. So what I want you guys to do in the comment section down below is to let me know who your hidden gems are going to be in this draft. Your guys that you want the Browns or any team to find that you think is awesome but nobody's talking about. I want to learn about that down below. And I want to know who you think the Browns should actually take in the draft. Do you agree with me and some of the guys I brought up? Or do you have your own ideas on what the Browns should do? Either way, let me know in the comment section down below. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk Browns down there. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget, if you like this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and think about dinging that notification bell so you can hear me talk about football even more. And if you have a buck or two to spare and would like to have your name pop up on this nice little scrolling bar that I've added to the channel, please consider donating a buck or two to my Patreon. It helps me make sure that I can provide quality content 3 days a week for you every week for this brown season. Okay, guys, but thank you again for watching. Thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for leaving comments and having discussions under my videos. It really is something that I do enjoy reading and getting into with you guys. So again, guys, thanks for all of that. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.